lay down in bed, I get my book out and I read. And it's an escape from all the stress of the day because I don't have to worry about anything else except what I'm reading. And it's like a movie playing in my head. And it's so relaxing, and it helps me to calm down and get over the stress of the day and be able to close my eyes and go to sleep. At every opportunity, I would steal down to the cellar to dive into my cardboard chest of hidden treasures, planting myself right in the middle of those adventures. I became a fearless explorer, a brilliant scientist, and a master riddle solver. I went to the depths of the ocean with Captain Nemo and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, stood right by Howard Carter's side as he discovered the tomb of King Tut, and landed on the moon with the crew of Apollo 11. I unlocked more riddles at Boy Detective Encyclopedia Brown and joined forces with Alfred Hitchcock and the three investigators to solve even greater mysteries. My books became my shelter, protecting me as the Robinson slings and arrows rained overhead. And I returned my books' protection by guarding them the way most children guard their teddy bears. As a little boy, I was mystified when bookworms burrowed into their pages and crushed when a basement flood destroyed several of them. Mrs. Levin's books gave me something else that I did not fully appreciate until many years later. A model for dealing with the Robinsons. It came from one of my favorite books, Watership Down, a novel I would read over and over again, published in 1972 and written by the British author Richard Adams. This book tells the tale of a band of resilient rabbits searching for a new home. Led by the small but exceedingly clever Hazel, the rabbits encountered many obstacles in their search. One of their first challenges was one I knew all too well. They encounter a warren of contented rabbits, a home that seems to be exactly what the group is looking for, yet they learn that this new home is not all it appears to be, and that it is in fact a cleverly crafted rabbit farm intended to ensnare them. Why would that book resonate with him? Why would that particular book make him think of his own situation? So he says that book was about a group of rabbits who were looking for a home, and they stumbled upon another group of rabbits that out from the outside looked like the perfect home. But what it was on the inside was anything but perfect. So how does that correlate to his own situation? We're on page 13. How would he relate to the rabbits that stumbled upon this home that was supposed to be a good place, but it wasn't a good place at all? How does that relate to his own personal situation? Good, thank you. So the Robinson family from the outside, it looks normal, right? The house looks normal, everything is fine. But once you're inside, it's a nightmare, and nobody really sees that because nobody is in there with them. But this young child knows that the Robinson house is not what it looks like it is. So that's why this particular book, Watership Down, draws him in, because those rabbits are going through the same thing he is. It says the rabbits escape the farm and often resort to trickery in their pursuit of a new home. Deception may seem unprincipled, but it is absolutely necessary if Hazel and his group of rabbits are to survive, especially when their new existence is threatened by another group of rabbits, the Epiphrans, and their evil leader, General Woundwort. So in that particular section, he says deception is usually a connotative with bad things. Like if you're being deceptive, you're being bad, right? But this book tells him that deception is not always a bad thing. Sometimes you have to be deceptive in order to free yourself from a bad situation. So when he reads this, he's like, oh, okay, you know, what I was doing with stealing the food and hiding it and everything, that wasn't really bad. I was doing what I needed to do to survive. And this book taught him that. There comes a time when deception is not enough, and the group must take a stand against general wound work, although they know that will likely cost them their lives. And so he also sees that at some point the deception is not going to be enough. At some point he's going to have to stand up and he's going to have to face the Robinsons and have that showdown, I guess, in order to survive this situation. I found kinship in the rabbits of Watership Down. They became my childhood friends, the only ones I was allowed to have, and I could cite their names at the drop of a hat. Fiver, Bigwig, Pipkin, and Blackberry. My friends were smart, fast, elusive, and resourceful. Their very survival was predicted on the ability to sense danger. Though confronted by bigger foes, they outwitted them. Perhaps most important, I saw the rabbits as fighting their combativeness, driven by a certainty that they could create a different and better life for themselves. For Hazel and his followers, it was never a question of if they would find a new home. It was simply a matter of when. So this book reinforced his desire to make himself a better person, to get himself to a better place. Remember earlier he had said he was almost given in, almost resigned to the fact that his life was going to be crap. But the box of books gave him a little lift, and this novel, Watership Down, really lifted him out of the funk, because they're like, these rabbits can do it. They fought, they survived, they were deceitful when they needed to be. They stood up for themselves, and they made it out the other side, and they got better, so I can do that too. So that's how this book was important to him. Over the years, Mrs. Levin stopped by many times to deliver a new box of books. In my quiet moments of reflection, I often wonder what might have become of me had not this kind woman lit a pathway for me through the suffocating darkness of the house on Arnold Street. The Robinsons never refused her request, perhaps because they knew that it would raise questions, but had they known that those books would sow the seeds of my rebellion, they would have torched them the minute Mrs. Levins was out of their sight. All right. So we're going to look at the assessment practice on page 15. We're going to do these together. Okay. So number 1 is select 2 strategies Steve used to cope with his situation. Kennedy? Reading, and what was the other thing that he did? Sneaking food, yeah. He snuck food. Remember, he was stealing groceries and taking them down there. He grabbed the cheese that the rats got, and he got the peanut butter in the tin can. So the 2 strategies that he used was sneaking food and reading. Those were the 2 things that he had going for him. All right, how does paragraph 32 contribute to the development of the author's idea? So we're going to look back at paragraph 32. I'm going to read that paragraph again. At every opportunity, I would steal down to the cellar to dive into my cardboard chest of hidden treasures. Planting myself right in the middle of those adventures, I became a fearless explorer, a brilliant scientist, and a master riddle solver. I went to the depths of the ocean with Captain Nemo and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, stood right by Howard Carter's side as he discovered the tomb of King Tut, and landed on the moon with the crew of Apollo 11. I unlocked more riddles with Boy Detective Encyclopedia Brown, and joined forces with Alfred Hitchcock and the 3 investigators to solve the great mysteries. My books became my shelter, protecting me as the Robinson slings and arrows rained overhead. And I returned my books' protections by guarding them the way most children guard their teddy bears. As a little boy, I was mystified when bookworms burrowed into their pages and crushed when a basement flood destroyed several of them. Alright, so it's asking, how does paragraph 32 contribute to the development of the author's ideas? A, by emphasizing the importance of having a challenging reading list. Did he talk about the importance of how hard the books were to read?
No.
No, so we can eliminate A. B, by providing details of the author's escape into the new world.
No.
Well, I kind of like that one. I kind of like.
Maybe.
We'll keep on. I'm gonna put a check by B because I like B, because he does provide details of his escape, because he talks about being in the ocean at 20,000 leagues under the sea. He talks about solving mysteries with Alfred Hitchcock. He talks about discovering King Tut's tomb in Mr. Carter's book. So I like B. C, by describing how his books were gradually destroyed. Now that I think we can eliminate, because he doesn't talk about all the books being destroyed. He just said he lost a few in a flood. D, by describing his secret reading place in the cellar. Now D would be the answer if maybe the paragraph was different, because there is one paragraph in here that details what his reading nook looked like. Where is it? Okay, paragraph 8 is the paragraph that describes his reading nook in detail. So paragraph 8 is not paragraph 32. So I'm going to eliminate D, because that's not what paragraph 32 says. So the correct answer is going to be B, by providing details of the author's escape into the world of books. Because he talks about he went to the depths of the ocean. He stood right by this guy as he discovered King Tut's tomb. He landed on the moon with one book, and he solved puzzles and crimes with another. So 3 is a two-parter. The first one is, which statement best describes the purpose of this text? What do y'all have to say about that one before I go over them? The purpose of the text, what would you say the answer is? Number 3, which statement best describes the purpose of this text? Why did he write this? Yes.
You talking about what's the answer?
Yeah, what's the
I
answer?
think it's C.
Okay, y'all would be right. C is the answer to that. It is to describe how Steve confronted and overcame hardships. The author's purpose in this story is to help someone else understand that they can have a better life. They just have to work at it. And then part B is asking you to select a sentence that supports the answer to part A. So which one of those do you think supports your answer in part A? And you're looking for something that he confronted and overcame hardships. Which one of those would be the most accurate? Yes, B? You said B? Okay. Well, B is a pretty good choice, but that's not the right one. Look at them again and think about what hardships did he have to overcome.
This book says A.
No, it's not A.
I said D.
D. D is Mrs. Levin's books gave me a model for dealing with the Robinsons, because the Robinsons were the hardship, right? I mean, they were the whole reason that this kid had troubles. All right, so what I want to do now is I'm going to move on to the next little story. The first one was a memoir, and that means it was like an autobiography that he wrote about his own life. The next thing we read is an argumentative essay. Did y'all have to write any argumentative essays in junior high? Yeah, you have to write. A lot of people call them persuasive essays, where you're trying to get someone to see things from your point of view. and this man wrote this essay. His name is Lane Wallace. He uses historical events, anecdotes, and examples to answer the question of whether survivors of danger are selfish. After examining the idea that fleeing from danger is a basic human survival instinct, she knows that some people seem to override this instinct in order to carry out dangerous rescues. She concludes that there is no one answer to this question because people respond differently to survival situations. Luckily, I have been blessed to never be in a survival situation. But I have heard and I have read people say that humans have two responses when they're in a survival situation: fight or flight. That means if you're facing down a bank robber, you're either gonna respond with fighting back, or you're gonna respond with flight, which is not necessarily running away, but doing whatever it is he tells you to do in order to get through it, right? So this guy is asking you in this essay, is survival selfish? Because imagine this. Imagine that you are stuck in a room with a serial killer and your best friend is in there with you. Say you're tied to a chair and you manage to get out of your binds, but the guy is coming back. You can hear him coming back. Are you going to stay and untie your friend and probably get caught and killed? Or are you going to run away and leave your friend? Okay, Kennedy.
I couldn't run away, I'm saying.
Run away. Kennedy honestly said, I'm running away.
It was like my mom and I would.
Nah, you gotta use the chair.
I was watching a episode of American Horror Story last week, and there was a part on there. Does anybody watch that series, American Horror Story? Do you remember the hotel series with Lady Gaga as a vampire?
Oh.
You remember it? All right. There was a scene in that TV show where they had two really young girls. They're from a different country. They came to America to go sightseeing, and they booked a room in this hotel. And they didn't realize that this hotel was evil. All right. So these two girls. What?
No, she ain't talking about that.
There was a scene in there where they kidnapped those girls and they were holding them hostage as food for the vampires. Okay? There was a part where one of the girls got out. This girl got out of her cage. Her friend was right next to her, and that girl ran off and left her friend. Now, she got killed before she made it out of the hotel, but she didn't even look back. I mean, she said, sucks to be you, but I'm a dip. All right? And I don't know, like, I wish I could be as honest as you are. If it was my kids, I guess, or one of my students, I would probably stay. But if it's just one of my friends, I might have to leave you there. Because
So you gonna risk your students for your
No,
I would stay here if we had a situation, which I hope we never do. You know, of course, I would stand in front of y'all. That's what I'm paid to do. But if it was just some random person, no, I'm not. I don't think I'm gonna stay if it's just some random person. I'm gonna be like, you're on your own. I'll pray for you, but I'm out. I'm gonna be praying while I'm running away. So he's asking, is survival selfish? So let me ask you this. Kennedy, since you were really honest about it, let me ask you this. say that you did run away and you survived. And let's say your friend got killed. Are you gonna feel guilt about that after that? Like you find out about, oh, you know, she died or he died. Are you gonna feel guilty at all? No? Good girl. Alright, so this argumentative essay is asking us, is that kind of survival instinct, is it selfish? Is it something we should be ashamed of? And the question underneath it is, if forced to choose, whose life would you save, your own or someone else's? I'd say it depends on who that someone else is. If it was someone that I loved, I would think that I would risk my life for that. And keep in mind that all of these things we're reading go back to the essential question, which is, how do you survive a crisis? Right? Okay, so I'm going to start, we're on page 23. I'm going to start reading this. Well, let me start on 22 and read about the author. Lane Wallace is a writer, adventurer, and career development coach. She has written for The Atlantic, The New York Times, and Outside Magazine, and was the first woman columnist ever hired at Flying Magazine, where she worked as an editor and columnist for 12 years. Her adventures have taken her to the 6 different continents and from 120 below the sea level to 70,000 feet above the earth. She has a blog on charting your own course in life. It's called No Man, No God, No Limits, and has written 2 books on the lessons of adventure, surviving uncertainty, and unforgettable. Can y'all turn that off, please?
Oh.
Thank you. Her latest project is a book on the power of a woman's authentic self and work. So we're going to start. Remember, this one is an essay. The last one we read was kind of like an autobiography. It was an excerpt from a man's story that he wrote about his own life. This is an essay, kind of like what you will be writing in here by the end of the year when you start writing your essays, okay? When the ocean liner, huh? What's that?